All right, so I'm heading to my local Kroger and I'm meeting up with someone from Facebook Marketplace, buying some comic books. So I'm buying about 760 comics and hopefully they're in good condition. Let's see how it goes. All right, so we're here, waiting for the guy to message me back, doing a shady comic deal in the middle of a Kroger parking lot. I see him. Oh snap, big old box.
I appreciate it, this helps me a lot.
Oh, of course, man, this is awesome. This is, so I've got a YouTube show where I talk about comic book series, toys, all that stuff.
Maybe I could be on it at some point.
Yeah, later. All right, so I got the comics, huge boxes. They look like they're in pretty decent shape. He's a collector, so he knew how to treat them. So yeah, I'll see you soon. All right, so we're gonna unbox these 770 comics. We're gonna time lapse it so you don't have to watch the whole thing. And then we are gonna pick out some of our favorites and talk about them. So I am getting extremely hot in this robe, so we're just gonna get started on the comics. Cheers, let's get into it. All right, so I'm just gonna start at the back of this box. Jason Todd, baby. Don't know if you saw the robe I'm rocking. We got the...
Been around for quarter century.
Roll up the sleeves, get into
I
it.
know that's not a lot of time. You can thank the man in the purple for giving you
It's getting a little hot in this robe. I think I gotta make a costume change.
to pay attention, but don't let them take your mind. Lost and you
Look at this Gold Avengers comic. Isn't that cool? That might be a little shiny. Shing, shing, shing.
it's done and they did it, and you do it better than they can. Half of the
G.I. Joe versus Transformers. Wow.
naked, remaking the music from a funky generation, so I can relate to mine. I feel the wind blow.
So out of all the comics, we probably have the most X-Men. This guy must have really liked the mutants.
I feel your tiptoe, and it's shaking the seats. Yeah, there's music in nature, and now the music's in me.
And the last one is the New Warriors. A lot of X-Men, a lot of old school Captain Americas. We've got some awesome Hulk comics. We're just all over the board and I love it. Wow, so there are so many comics here. I was gonna pick out my favorites and talk through them with you guys, but I think that might take a little long. So I decided to reach out to a new friend of mine, KnowGoodComics. He's on Instagram and recently just started a YouTube channel. So he dives deep into the comic book runs of all your favorite Marvel and DC characters. So I'd like to welcome Justin from KnowGoodComics into the Pat Cave. So Justin, before we get started, tell people your comic book origin story, how this all started for you.
So it's kind of funny. I'm 31, going to be 32 years old soon. And I didn't get into comics till I was 29 years old. And I mean that in a way of like, look, I always loved the characters. I always loved, the movies and things like that. And the biggest thing is my dad actually used to draw for Marvel and DC. So I grew up with this stuff. But in a sense, I looked at it as like the family business. So I actually kind of pushed it away and didn't want much to do with it. I would go to the occasional Comic-Con and I'd see people asking him for his autograph. And it was just weird to me. I'm like, this is my dad. Like, you want my dad's autograph? It's like really weird. So I don't know. It was just not something I really grasped. And I kind of pushed that away and got into sports and other things. And a little less than 2 years ago, when a friend of mine kind of brought me into another comic shop that's local, I decided to pick up a comic book. So I read it and it literally left me with a drop off where I'm like, I need to read the next issue. I was like, this is great. I was like hooked. And like, from there I started buying, and that's kind of how I discovered it for myself.
Wow, so comic books are in your genes. That's awesome. Your dad probably has tons of stories to tell. So speaking of stories, that stuff behind you, is there one or two things back there that really stand out that maybe you have a cool story about?
Yeah, I mean, if you don't mind, I'll grab. This is Incredible Hulk 271. This is the first appearance of Rocket Raccoon. Very new to spending a lot of money on comic books, so I want to say I spent like $75 on this as a raw comic book. I knew that this Comic-Con was coming up, and the artist, Al Milgrom, he was going to be at East Coast Comic-Con. The other cool thing about Al Milgrom is he was the one that officially called my dad to say that he wanted him to work on a project. Definitely has a really cool tie-in to my dad and his relationship. So, and I actually told him that when I got this book signed. I actually got this, and I got another book signed that him and my dad both worked on. Yeah, it was a Spider-Man issue. But anyways, so I asked him for his signature. He was normally charging, I think Al Milgrom was charging like $10 or $15 per signature. And I told him about my dad, and I just said, hey, I just want to say thanks. You know, it's really cool to know about you and the history of my dad. He goes, who's your dad? And I tell him my dad's Greg LaRocque, and he's like, oh my goodness. And at that point, he refused to take my money, and we talked for a few minutes. It was really nice of him. This is definitely something that's in my PC, my personal collection, that I'm going to keep very, very long time. So that's why it's so cool. And also, it came back, as you might see, a 9.6. Which I was not expecting. I thought it was going to be like, you know, maybe an 8.5 or something like that. So when it came back at 9.6, like months later, I was shocked.
Dang, man, that is such a cool story. And 9.6, fantastic find. Okay, so before we get going, last question. For all the people watching out there and me who are beginners at comics, where do we start? Do you have any tips and tricks, or maybe your 3 recommended comic runs?
Top 3. All right, if you're brand new to comics, I mean, it's obviously it's what you like, right? So you certainly want to lay that out first. So I would say definitely decide on the characters before you even consider writers or other things. You certainly could ask people, give some advice. But for me personally, if someone was asking me, I would say for sure Jason Aaron, his run on Thor from 2012. I would say certainly start there. It's a 25-issue set, and it's amazing. X-Men Claremont, the issue 94 that I was talking about earlier, highly recommend. Anybody that's getting into, Marvel especially, and looking for some X-Men related stuff. He wrote through the 70s all the way through like the 90s. So he was with the run for a really long time. Those are certainly my top 2 that I could think of. I think that's all I got.
Yeah, no, that's good enough, man. That's good. I appreciate you being on the show. Everybody, that was Justin from KnowGoodComics. He just started a YouTube channel, and he's been on Instagram for a while, so go check out his channels and show him some love. All right, so that wraps up this week's episode. Thanks for joining us. Make sure to smash that subscribe button, like and share with your fellow nerds, and looks like I got a lot of work to do. So I will see you next Friday. Belu, belu, belu.